Welcome to Biblical Warfare. We'll have one of those short videos in the series of quick bites, and we'll be in Isaiah 25, 6 and 9. Actually, I do not really intend to go into the text itself, but give you the context for that. It is important to understand that we are actually, when we read these wonderful words about the mountain and the whole story there, is we need to understand the historical, prophetic, and therefore geographical context. We are in the second part of Isaiah, and by saying we are in the second part of Isaiah, I by no means want to imply that we are in the book that was written by some kind of other guy. No. Within Isaiah, whole 66 chapters, as was written by one character, we can definitely see different and important themes switching back and forth. For example, from chapter 1 to chapter 12, we are mostly concerned with Judah, with Jerusalem, with Mount Zion, and so on and so forth. All the promises are about Israel or Judean kings, and as I said, and so on and so forth. But then, look at that. In chapter 13, we have the beginning of what sometimes scholars call OAN, Oracles Against the Nations. So we will have a series of, and I wrote them down, of speeches against other nations, other, not the Israelites. Chapter 13 to 14, it's about Babylon. Then the speech about Moab, chapters 15 and 16. Chapter 17 starts with the oracle against Damascus, which is the capital of Syria. Chapters 18 and 20 are mostly concerned with Cush, or what we call presently Ethiopia, or there will be also kind of like an woven into that, there will be a passage about Egypt. And then in chapter 21, we have actually three speeches. One is about wilderness of the sea, then about Duma, and most of the scholars agree that that's a play on word of Edom. Okay, so if you go this way, you can read it as Edom, and probably it was like a sneaky way to mention them without mentioning them. You know, those tricks that that you can discover with the literature analysis. And then we have Arabia in verses 13 to 17 in chapter 21. Then chapter 22 dedicated to the Valley of Vision, and chapter 23 to the Tyre. Okay, so that's on the coastal area, coastal region. Actually, guys who helped a lot to David and then to Solomon to build the temple. And then 24, 25, 26, the recreation of the whole earth. So there is no nation in particular will be mentioned there, but it's a whole earth thing. And when we see that, you know, it's actually can be outlined. Let me turn this way. It can be outlined this way, kind of chiastic: A, B, C, B prime, A prime. With I even marked them, you know. So 24, 1 through 9 is mostly about the land, and then which matches the thematically 27, 1 through 11. It's also about the land. 24, 10 to 25, 5 is about the city. And chapter 26 is mostly about the city. And in the middle, that's where our passage is. We are talking about the mountain. With conclusion, the last two verses of chapter 27 is restoration of the land, the Jerusalem, it's like a city, and the mountain too. And when we say the mountain here and here, even though it is not mentioned, most likely, I mean, I see no reason why not to think that way. We are talking about Mount Zion. Even though it is not the mountain for other nations on one hand, but if we'll go into book of Isaiah chapter 2, in chapter 2, that's the promise that we are given. Verses 2 and 3. So, it shall come to pass in the later days that the mountain of the house of the Lord shall be established as the highest of the mountains, and shall be lifted up above the hills, and all the nations shall flow to it, and many people shall come and say. So nations and peoples is not really synonyms. It's a similar things, but one of them most likely describes the tribes of Israel, all 12, while the other one depicts all the nations of the world. So both Israelites and non-Israelites together will come and say, "Come, let us go to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, and that he shall teach us his ways, and that we may walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go the law," or shall come the Torah, the teaching and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. Okay, so we have a land where all nations gather, and they come and they flow toward the city, and they want to come to the top of the mountain. But when we see that, this combination of land, city, and mountain, we should not be surprised. In some sense, and that's probably the most important part that you want to take out of this lesson, of this small quick bite part, is actually what we find here in 25, 6 through 12, is in a very deep theological sense, is a response of what happened by the Tower of Babel. If we'll go to Genesis chapter 11, we can read, "Now the whole earth had one language and the same words. As people migrated from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there." And verse 3, "And they said to one another, 'Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly.' And they had bricks for stone and bitumen for mortar. And they said, 'Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens.'" So we have city and the tower, artificial mountain. Okay, the mountain that is done with bricks by man's hand, not with God's help. Okay, so they found a plain in the land. They gathered even closer together, trying to build a city, and the mountain, spiritual, or religious mountain, let's put it this way, to have in the center of the city. And we know the result. As a result, they broke into liturgical and national pieces. That society was broken into pieces, and people started to move from that place into different directions, and we ended up with many, many nations. Again, if we come back into the book of Isaiah, actually that's what he promises to us in chapter 25. "On this day, the mountain of the Lord of hosts will make for all people, on this mountain, the Lord of hosts will make for all peoples a feast of rich food." And we see that it's all people. But later on in verses 7 and 8, it's even further. "Because the covering that was cast over all peoples, and the veil that was spread of all nations will be gone. And the Lord will wipe away the tears from all faces, and the reproach of his people will be taken away from all the earth." All the earth, all faces, all peoples, all nations will come together and worship together on the mountain with the Lord of hosts when he will prepare the feast. May you be blessed.